Kia ora and welcome back. This has been a great day and we're getting towards the end of the day, and I tell you, if you've been here since lunchtime, I hope you're sticking in here because there's some great topics coming up, and this is another one that we do not want to miss, all around cybersecurity, cyber crimes. And at the moment I think we're talking about it more than ever because actually we're more vulnerable in some ways. At the same time, there's more ways of solving the issues around passwords, new sort of protocols. We're thinking about AI in a very different way, about security, what that might mean. So we're in good hands here for this session. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we will be talking here with Shelby Ighagney, who is the Senior Manager of Security Operations at ANZ. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, I've been doing a little cyber stalking of my own just to kind of get a bit of background. Right. So you've had a couple of years at ANZ.
Yep.
You've kind of had, I understand, somewhere around 22 years in the tech industry.
Yeah,
so you've been around for a while, 17 years in security.
Yep, that's right.
So you've seen a few things, I imagine.
Definitely a few things. Yep. So I've been doing security for about 17 years, and about 13 years of that I've been doing security management. And a large part of my I went to AUT.
Well, they'll be pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Great,
for,
good plug.
My diploma in business computing. But I've definitely seen a lot. I think as part of the main part of my career, I looked after enterprise and government customers. So it was as serious as I kind of got from a security perspective. And especially I think in the like you say, in the last couple of years, there's definitely been an increase, right? We're busier than ever, and as you say as well, we have more tools in our hands. So.
Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting. I run a quarterly briefing on technical advances, and I did one last Friday, and one of the opening things I talked about is you only need 3 seconds of someone's voice now to create, basically a really believable version of someone's voice.
Yes.
And they were running an item on CNN about a mum who had her daughter calling her, panicked that she'd been kidnapped. Her daughter was actually on the ski slope somewhere. She was totally fine, but her mother really believed for a ransom that it was her daughter calling her for help. You start thinking about this new era where you can basically pretend to be anyone. You can create AI to make it look like anyone.
Yep.
And so we're going to have deep fakes on top of all the phishing attacks and all the things we're already dealing with. How much of your time is spent thinking about what comes next?
Oh, a lot. And actually in that example alone, we do a lot of work from a security industry perspective. We always get asked those questions around, okay, now how do we protect against something like that? And that literally was a question that was asked of me within ANZ.
Oh, you mean it wasn't original?
No, well, I think, to be honest, there's a lot of, in security, there's a lot of preparation, right? And when you prepare, I guess, in a way, your managers and your shareholders always have these questions. And the good thing is, with that example in particular, we did have defensive, capabilities to stop that from happening at ANZ from a global perspective. And, and that's not just us. I think, most major banks do nowadays as well. So, those things are scary, but we do have tools that would help with that sort of thing as well.
I have to say, though, if one of my board members sent me a voice message and it said, hey, look, I'm in a bit of trouble, and it's their voice, it's not just a phishing email, and they're saying, can you just throw me a couple of $1,000s into my bank account? I'm just in a bit of a pickle.
Yes.
I'd pretty hard to convince me it wasn't them. If I'm not sure going, it's there. Particularly, I guess it's their phone number. Yeah. I guess these are layers we probably have to look for. It's what are the indicators that something's a little bit off? Yes,
that's right. Look, I think, what you say there around time pressure and stresses, that is one of the natural ways, basically it's part of social engineering, right? Put you under pressure, it's someone from authority, you have to do something about it. But if you feel like it's a little bit odd, really it's for you to verify. Because in this world, it is, no matter how smart you are, there is an opportunity for you to be outsmarted. And, it's, if you've got that feeling, verify.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best kind of rule we can all follow is take one more look. Does that email look right? Take one more look. Does that text feel like it's coming from the right person? Did you actually order something that someone's claiming they need your tracking number? Or did you really go through that toll? Did you really go, there's all these sort of fake texts at the moment coming through about tolls on the motorways and things that are happening. And it's about saying, let's think logically. And I must admit, I really do that now. I think about this idea of, have I done that? Did I order something that I would be getting a delivery for and really kind of taking a second look? In a bank, I don't even know how you begin because, to start to think about the inventive ways that that you're going to have cyber criminals thinking about, there's a pool of money, they're looking for it.
Oh, yes, yes. And I think, this is the thing, right? Like I came from the security part of the industry where I help, secure government departments, and then you go into the finance side of things, which is equally as scary, right? From a security perspective. And I think it's all about, to be honest, security awareness. So like the examples that you've provided already, that's the sort of thing that enterprises need to do with their staff, because once they see that, then you start seeing these clues that, oh, this is kind of like the normal MO of someone who's doing social engineering or a phishing attack and all that sort of stuff. And that's really quite key. Defensive technologies, but also just that security training and awareness.
How do you imagine, we're getting to this era now of no passwords?
Yes.
We're starting to see it.
Yes.
It's not just the hype anymore. How far away do you think that is before we start to move away from needing passwords and into having other forms of validation?
Well, to be honest, I think we're actually already there. We're not, I guess when you say password, you're talking about like alphanumeric and things like that. Now there's a lot of, biometrics through your voice, through your face. But I think quite importantly, moving away from passwords, you still need some sort of multi-factor authentication.
Sure.
It is just one of the strongest ways to stop an attack or a breach.
Yeah.
For pretty much all businesses, and even, from a personal perspective. A lot of the breaches I see now is still through just lack of basic controls like that. So it really does stop a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's that basic thing around, what is your password and things, and it's, no matter how many times you tell people, I still know people who have the same password for everything.
Yep,
and
that's right.
And the one that the kids know because,
Yeah.
so, there's this ongoing just changing behaviour. So when you think about an enterprise, and, before ANZ you were at Spark, you're talking about big organisations with lots of data, lots of privacy concerns, lots of transactions. You're looking at the system, is that right? Your role is to go end to end.
Yes, that's right. It's end to end. You're looking at what sort of information security standards they are. Like, how do you apply best industry standards to an infrastructure and how you govern your data? That's quite an important thing because a lot of businesses don't measure that. Like, how good are they? How mature are they in that space? And that's one of the key things that we have to do. It's not about just having the tools, but you also have to maintain it to industry standards continually. It's not a set and forget. It's not just, have a firewall and that's it, it'll do it for you. It's nowhere near the case anymore.
And so do you see trends? Like, is there a time when you'll see this type of breach or this type of behaviour in terms of cyber criminals, and then it sort of goes out of flavour and something else comes in and you start looking for something other type of behaviour?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely ebbs and flows. I think, a couple of years ago, DDoS was quite a big trend, especially in New Zealand. At the moment, actually, what I would say in the last 6 months, ransomware has been quite a strong trend. ANZ is part of a lot of local and international security groups, organisations, and we share a lot of information together. And I think that's the good thing about the security industry is we share a lot of information. We're not against each other, we're with each other.
No, we can't be, yeah.
Yeah, and so ransomware is a big one. And actually, when you look at CERT New Zealand, I think for people who don't know.
Cyber Emergency Response Team?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Glad you didn't ask me what that was. But they actually, they provide quarterly and yearly reports. And in the latest quarterly report, they had ransomware increased by 500%.
Wow!
In that final quarter, and I see it. I deal with it a lot from an information sharing perspective, and as a business, we're all making sure that we're prepared for it.
I understand, and I may be wrong, and I'd love to be proven wrong, is that no one's ever paid a ransomware who's actually got the data back. Like someone's like, that's never happened. Like that, people have paid the money, never got anything back.
Look,
actually, you're better off not negotiating. Stay away from that. Is
actually,
that the general rule?
Oh, it is the general rule. The general rule is you don't even have any open dialogue.
Yeah.
Right, and you definitely don't pay because, again, like you say, there's no assurances at all that you're going to get your data back. It's going to be destroyed, or you're going to get that key to unencrypt. Right? It just isn't there. So don't give them that economy. Reach out to CERT New Zealand, reach out to those, organisations that'll help you out. But yeah, it is the general rule.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you see pockets from, when you're thinking about a bank, do you see pockets in the world that are getting better at this and actually having to think and share data globally, not just locally, but actually thinking about the types of a capability. I mean, AI is going to change things again.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
so what type of sharing capability do you have between banks or the finance system or other parts of the sector, other sectors?
Look. So I think this is the good thing about, like I said, about the security industry is that we're really here to share information with each other. There are government-led, I guess, groups that we've opted into, and then just basically independent groups as well. Mm-hmm. And that's for example, we're part of an Asia Pacific financial sharing information group, and so there's no real sort of secret source to any of this. It's just we meet up every month, every quarter, mm-hmm. and we share information. We do presentations to each other. We provide indicators of compromises. Mm-hmm. So if something's happening in one bank in particular, they'll provide us that, hey, this is what it looked like when it was happening to us, and it's really quite open.
Yeah, and do you think the awareness of the everyday public, using online banking, or not even just banking, just generally online, are they getting savvier around cyber, or do you think that as soon as we start to get ahead in our knowledge, that the attacks become more frequent or bigger or more clever?
I think generally speaking, we are becoming a bit more aware, mm-hmm. In the general public. But for example, again, I'm going to quote a stat from CERT New Zealand. In between 2021 and 2022, there was actually less reported financial-based crimes, right? Mm-hmm. But in effect, there were 20% increase in financial loss in that period as well.
Right.
So even though it's a little bit smaller, we're getting a bit more savvier, like you say, things can be a bit more complicated and they can extort more money from you. So it was like $20 million that reportedly went missing within New Zealand alone, and that's reported. Of
course, lots of people won't report.
Yes, yeah, lots of people.
Valuations will be affected and other things, yeah.
Credibility, yeah.
Absolutely. And actually just on that, I mean, it's really hard to get cyber insurance. It's expensive. A lot of the people don't want to do it anymore. Insurance companies are like, whoa, trying to keep away from it,
Yep.
Do you know what the average cost is for a typical business, a business here in Aotearoa, that if it has some form of loss of data, for example, do you have any idea what the cost is to a business?
It's hard to quantify. And it's very different, right, depending on what's actually happened. But, like financially, sure, you can possibly quantify that. But the ongoing costs around your credibility and loss of trust and reputation, that's very hard to quantify. And it's hard to gain back, right? And so, no, I can't give you a proper answer with that one. But, yeah, it's...
But do you think businesses are putting enough emphasis on the risk? Or there's still shortcuts that you think potentially are out there? I mean, you've been around long enough to know that, everybody's always trying to make cut costs.
Yes, definitely.
So is this an area where you think people still underestimate the likelihood that this could happen to them?
Definitely. I think, I've spoken to enough people, and especially in the medium to small size businesses, where they see security as more of a side desk job. Like an infrastructure engineer can do the security for you and things like that. So there's definitely a little bit of underplaying around that. And, I've seen enough to understand that that is a really dangerous way to look at security. And the cost, I guess, in terms of the cost, I think you're much better off putting investment into security versus, loss of business and finance because of a breach. It just costs you more money. So insurance, yes, is expensive. Normal insurance is expensive if you want to be properly covered, right? So, yeah.
Okay. And how do you focus on talent? Because obviously we know that there's a global shortage of cyber trained people, and there's a desperate need for more people.
Yes, yeah.
If people are out there watching this, maybe you've got some young people thinking about a career change, what is the best way someone can step into that space and start becoming qualified in this area, so we can start filling some of those gaps that every company seems to be facing right now, of just not having enough talent?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think from a tertiary perspective, if you're in AUT or Auckland University and other places, finish off your degree, finish off your diploma. That's the boring way to say it. But start looking at the roles that you want to get into before you finish. So do really well. Mm-hmm. Start getting your foot into the company. The last thing you kind of want is to look for a job when everyone's looking, right? If you're looking at a change of career, from my perspective, speak to someone who is already in the industry. look at what certifications are required, because certifications change over time.
Right.
You know, every 5 years, that certification is superseded by something else. So look at that, do the certification. And I think my top tip is, you know, get your certification, build yourself a lab, whether it be at home or in the cloud. And that's the best thing you can put on your cover letter.
Right.
If you don't have that, if you don't have the experience, show that you've invested in, you know, what you want. You're not just here to kick the tires and try and get a pay rise. You know, it's, you're here, you want to do it, you know.
How many people within ANZ are employed in cybersecurity?
Oh.
Like, I mean, how big a thing is this?
Oh,
in a bank?
it's really big. Actually, before I answer that, we did like a little research. Right? We got the results of it about 3 weeks ago, and security and cloud were the top 2 of the capabilities that people wanted to get into. So it's quite important.
Internal staff?
Internal staff, yeah.
Wow, that's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
But I think overall, I think we're roughly around 500.
Wow.
Globally. So it's, you know, it's big, and yeah, needs to be bigger.
Yeah, and so when you started off, I mean, you're talking about, you know, a couple of decades ago.
Yes.
How much has it changed? You know, was it like just an afterthought back then, and now it's just sort of become such a mainstream part of it? I mean, how much has it grown?
Yeah, it's changed. I think predominantly when I first started, it was all around a firewall and also a little bit of email protection around just spam, anti-spam, and not even antivirus across that. And then I remembered there was one person that was like, oh, we should have some sort of security analyst that, you know, sort of review incidents and alerts. Right. And I was like, really? And then it literally started growing from there. And now when you look at a security career, there's so many pillars within it, you know, and yeah, it's definitely grown, especially in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting when you talk to young people, and I don't even mean even really that young, so people say into their mid-20s and younger, things like email they don't use. Like they say the only time you have an email account is for your bank and your employer. Yeah. So apart from that, you know, we've got to sort of think about how another whole generation connect and communicate, and how a lot of these are social media platforms, that they're on messaging apps. You know, there's all these other ways now, and of course you're going to have more emerging all the time with technology advances. You know, in a bank, how do you think about and predict what a younger audience, you know, we're a very, like most part of the world, we're young, we've got plenty of, you know, Gen Zers out there entering the workforce for the first time who are like, email, whoa, I don't really use email. Yeah. You know, how do you start thinking about protecting your customers and staff from other forms of communication? Because we focus a lot on email. You know, every time I look at companies, we talk about email. Yeah. But that's not for everyone.
No, it's not for everyone. I think, you know, in terms of staff, you know, we pay special attention to things outside of emails, like just normal data leakage through your web browser, for example. You know, we have data loss prevention in that space, we have data loss prevention in the cloud, and, you know, again, these are sort of the key controls that most banks in New Zealand would have, and we're the same. But, you know, yeah, we do, it's not just an email thing, but email is still the largest attack vector for security breaches.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business, you're watching this, you know, you've got 10 people, you're in the cloud, what would you say are the key things you should be looking for or prioritising now if you've done zero about cybersecurity? So you've got a website, you've got your internal systems, if you're using your number of apps and software in the cloud. Yes. What should they be thinking about?
The first thing is if they don't have the capabilities in-house, which sounds like they may not have, you know, if you have 10 people maybe, is you go to a consultancy firm or a security service provider in New Zealand. We've got some really good, talented, you know, companies here that do that for you. And literally, it's not the most expensive thing to do. And they'll give you what your lowest hanging fruit around, you know, how do you secure your web application and your cloud. And this is the thing about cloud as well, is that people think that cloud is new, it's more modern, it's more secure. It is not. I'll tell you that it's not. And a lot of the security tooling in the cloud is still a little bit immature.
Right.
Yeah.
And so get some good advice.
Get some good advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, and do you think there's a certain amount that people should be thinking in terms of the budget they should be putting aside? Like, if you're a small business, we're a country of small businesses. So a lot of people here, I imagine, will be not 10 people, but 3 people, but still have maybe an e-commerce site. They're still gathering private information, you know, personal data. You know, do you sort of imagine how much they should be thinking about what kind of spend they should be putting on this? If they're in business, is it sort of like a magic rule of, 5% of your entire revenue should be on this, or there's no magic rules, it's just what you want to do?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're doing. Yeah, because different parts of security have higher cost, and I know that because I have quite a few security capabilities, and it really depends. But there are ways to save money as well. If you don't have enough people, then opt in to people who provide you that service as a service. So that is cheaper than hiring one full-time person to do the work for you. And so yeah, there's no magic number around that, but I think an old industry number around supporting your infrastructure is probably about 15% of each device that you sort of maintain, right? Is kind of but that's an old industry figure.
Okay. Well, Shelby, look, I really appreciate it. I mean, here you are, you're an expert in your field at ANZ, and we're asking you some really small business questions, but really great advice. I think there's a lot of people who completely misunderstand the effort that's needed and the responsibility we have. So I really appreciate that. And for your time today, for coming in and sharing some of your kind of advice from across the world.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.